Qui manière?
Very good.
Tout le monde. Okay. Right, devotees, friends. I hope you all understand English okay. How to say not Pasco, do you say Pasco en Creole? Pasco? Pasqui. What would you say? Moi, Creole.
More Creole.
Oh, Mo Creole. Anyway, it's very bad still. Okay, here we go. Now, maybe some of you were here last year when I did a program one evening, and we also had a Prabhupada night. So, I've got a whole lot of Prabhupada stories. I've got a whole store of Prabhupada pastimes, but I don't know which ones I told you last time and which ones I didn't tell you. But I think you won't remember anyway, so it doesn't really matter so much. What do you think? Shall I start with something sort of, what would you say, very, very serious? Or shall I start with something light?
Well, let's start with serious.
Serious. Okay. Serious. Okay, let me shock you a bit. Let's see. Yes. Prabhupada. There was this one devotee. His name was Nandakumar. This is not the Nandakumar who is in South Africa, if you know the devotees in South Africa. This is another Nandakumar. Prabhupada had two Nandakumars. So this was the first one. He was an American. And he became Prabhupada's personal servant. Yeah, personal servant. And that was very demanding service. So on his first day as Prabhupada's servant, here we are, on his first day, he had so much to do, and he'd never done it before. And so it was very difficult getting everything done, and he didn't know where things were, or how certain things were meant to be, and all that. So he was busy the whole day until late at night. And devotees, he had only chanted 14 rounds. It was the first time in his life, as a devotee at least, he had not finished his 16 rounds, and it was late. It was maybe 11 o'clock at night. He's really fatigued, and he just didn't think he was going to be able to finish his round, the last two rounds, nicely. So he thought, okay, no problem, I'll do them tomorrow. Let me take rest. So he took rest. And next morning, early morning, maybe 4 o'clock or something like that, he got up, took a bath, and came in to see Prabhupada, what needs to be done. And you know what the first thing Prabhupada said to him was? Take a guess. Are you chanting your rounds? And so this Nanda Kumar, he explained, well, you know, yes, I do. I always chant my rounds, every day. But this time, yesterday, and he explained what had happened. And so I still have 2 rounds to do. And Prabhupada said, listen to this. Did I tell this story last year?
I can't remember.
You can't remember? Yeah, I can't either. Okay, but you say no. Okay, anyway, it doesn't matter because Prabhupada said, repetition of a good thing is good. So even if you know it, it's not a problem. So Prabhupada said, when you are regularly chanting 16 rounds, it is like a young child learning to walk with the help of the mother. Because the mother is holding the child's hand, when the child starts to fall, the mother holds the child up. You all know, you've had experience. And so the child does not actually fall. So Prabhupada said, it is the same with chanting. Prabhupada said, if you are completing 16 rounds and start to fall down, Krishna will hold you up and not allow that you fall down. Then Prabhupada, sometimes Prabhupada, I don't know if it's captured so much in video, but sometimes Prabhupada, when he was making a point, he would open his eyes very wide and sort of lean back a little and move his hand. So he did like that. And moving his hand back and forth. Prabhupada said, however, if you were not chanting at least 16 rounds every day, your whereabouts are unknown, and you will definitely fall down. This is something a little serious. Okay. How many rounds today?
20.
20. Okay, congratulations. It's a good story, isn't it?
Yeah.
Now I know, well I don't know, but I assume that some of you here are not actually chanting 16 rounds. I mean, obviously the little children are not, and maybe, I don't know, some of you adults, it wouldn't be very surprising if in an assembly of 50 or 60 devotees, if there's some who are not chanting 16 rounds. Some people just haven't reached that point. So, you know, don't panic. Don't panic. I don't want to frighten you. But if you become a little frightened, that's all right also. Okay? Because it's something, you know, it's really such an important thing. Anyway, that was to get us off on a serious note. Something very serious. How many rounds today? Huh? 16. Good. Should I ask you or I shouldn't ask you? I won't ask. It's all right. It's not all right, but I'll just say it's all right. Okay, now I'm going to tell you a sort of amusing story, which I think I didn't have last year, as I recall at least. So I imagine you haven't heard it. This is a story from when Prabhupada first visited Paris. Paris means what? I think it's 1970, perhaps even 69, actually, I'm not exactly sure, but it's definitely around that time. And Prabhupada was about to come in a few weeks or quite soon from London. He, in Europe, he visited London first, and he would always spend time in London. So he was coming from London, and one of the local devotees from Paris, actually is American, but he stayed in Paris and fluent French speaker. His name is Hari Vilas. He's kind of famous devotee a bit. He's living in America nowadays. I think his granddaughter was here. Anyway, let's not worry about it. So Prabhupada is coming shortly, and the devotees want to arrange a prestigious public program in a prestigious hall somewhere in central Paris, so people will take it all very seriously. So this devotee, Hari Vilas, he went to, in Paris, I don't know Paris, I've been there a few times, but I don't know my way around Paris at all. But in Paris, at that time, maybe still, there was a theater. It was the top theater, the best, highest class, famous, most famous. It was called the Olympia. You've heard of it, yeah? The Olympia. Very expensive and big. I don't know, a few thousand people at least can fit in there. And very prestigious. All the important and famous performers, they perform there. So Hari Vilas went there and spoke to the manager, the chief. And he asked him a question. Have you heard of the Beatles? In those days, even today, perhaps, but really in those places, every single living entity, including the cockroaches and ants, they had all heard of the Beatles. Every single last one of them. So the man, of course, said, yes. And he's thinking, wow, maybe they want to come and play here, which would have been good for him. So Hari Vilas said, the Beatles guru is coming to Paris. Wow, really? And it'll be a very big program, very prestigious. We want to use this theater. And the manager said, are the Beatles going to come? And Hari Vilas said, yes, of course. But it's a charitable thing. So we want to use your theater, but don't charge us. And he said, yeah, not only the Beatles, but probably the Rolling Stones. And he mentioned some other names. Maybe Johnny Halliday, right? Who passed away a while ago. They're all going to come. And so the man said, sure, no problem. You can use the hall free of charge. So they did. And they had a big Vyasasan. And you may have seen photos of Prabhupada at that program. He's sitting on this Vyasasan, which has very big at the back, sort of backrest, quite fancy looking and big. It may be blue, I think. But anyway, it's really big. And Prabhupada's sitting like this. That was that program. And devotees. About 50 people came.
Oh, no.
And the Beatles didn't come. And neither did Johnny Halliday either. It was just the devotees. But anyway, Prabhupada was very happy. That's an interesting little story. But then the program finished, and the devotee who was the driver, he dropped Prabhupada at the front door and then drove off to find parking. The parking was a couple of blocks away, so Prabhupada had to go outside and stand in the road, on the side of the road, and wait for like 15 or 20 minutes for the car to come. And there was a Parisian cafe there. Very typical cafe, if you know what I mean. People talking and sitting and drinking and smoking and drinking wine and whatnot. And the devotee who was standing there with Prabhupada said, the devotee asked Prabhupada, would you like to sit down in the cafe? Or like on the street, because it was also, there were chairs and tables on the street. So would you like to sit down and wait, Prabhupada? And Prabhupada said, do they smoke and drink liquor here? And the devotee said, yes. And Prabhupada said, then a guru cannot sit there. Guru cannot sit there. And he just stood by the road. That's also nice, isn't it? Okay, here's another story you don't know, because I just heard it a few weeks ago. Prabhupada was in Los Angeles temple, which in those days I think it was the biggest temple in Iskcon, actually. And it's still, at least by Western world standards, it is quite a substantial place. It's nothing compared to Mayapur or, these big places nowadays. But it was the headquarters, and it was quite substantial. So Prabhupada, there was the Sunday program. Prabhupada gave the class, and then everyone went outside. There they take prasadam out on the grass, because there's a little, maybe 20 meters from the door of the temple building to the road itself, so that people sit there and take prasad. So Prabhupada, though, he was going to walk out, but then someone came to speak to him just as he was getting off the Vyasasana. So the devotees and the guests went out, sat down, prasadam was served. Prabhupada was speaking to this person for maybe 15 or 20 minutes. So by the time he got outside, everyone was in the middle of prasadam. It was just full prasadam time. And devotees and guests were eating and talking. You know what it's like. I'm sure it's like that here. It's the Sunday feast. It's time to catch up with your friends. What's happening, and what do you think about this? And so on and so forth. And Prabhupada walked out the front door, and there is the lawn, and however many, 100 or 150 people, devotees and friends, sitting there taking prasadam, and they're all happy and smiling. And it's really like a very jolly and blissful scene. And Prabhupada said, listen to this, this is interesting. And this was told to us actually it was at the GBC meetings in Tirupati in October. So it means, 6 weeks ago. The devotee told us who was there. He was there. Prabhupada said to him, I don't think I would have a single disciple if it were not for prasadam. And this, this should be a stimulus for those of you who cook for the deities and cook for the devotees and cook on Sundays. I'm sure there's a few of you here who are involved in that sort of service. But when you're cooking, you should really try and do it nicely. Really try and do it nicely. Not just, the same old thing. Gros pois et chouchou. Right. We know how to say, I know. Mokone, that's mokone. 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 Vraiment. Yeah, so if you're a cook, then please learn how to cook nicely. And because it touches the hearts of the devotees and the people very deeply. Let me just tell you a story. I've probably told this before, but some time previously. It's not exactly a Prabhupada story. But in South Africa, in 1975, our devotees were registering Iskcon as an official registered religious organization. So the one devotee who was South African, he went to the capital, Pretoria, with the documentation for the registration and to pay the money and all that, to complete the registration. So in he went, and there was, in the registration office, the person he met, the official, was a real white South African, Afrikaans, like a real white nationalist. Yeah. And really into South Africa. So this devotee went up and presented the papers, and the man looked at them, and the devotee said, yes, we want to register as the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, Iskcon. And the man's looking at this, and they have a certain way of speaking. I don't want to mock them, but it's kind of funny. Anyway, I'll just sort of, in a normal way, speak. The man said, you can't be the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, Iskcon, because this is South Africa. You have to be the South African Society for Krishna Consciousness, SASCON. Seriously. It doesn't have the same, ring to it as Iskcon International. So the devotee tried to explain that, we are a branch of an international organization, and all over the world, this is who we are and what we're called, and we're known all over the world. So please, let us register as the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, Iskcon. And the man said, no, 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 no. You have to be the South African Society for Krishna Consciousness, SASCON. So it went back and forth, the devotees trying to somehow or other convince him. Then the devotee remembered he had some Simply Wonderfuls in his little shoulder bag. So he pulled out a Simply Wonderful, a reasonably sized one, and said, here, take this, my wife made it for you. And here's this man, he's like a 50-year-old Afrikaans bureaucrat. It's all he's done his whole life. And they're really into controlling and refusing. And now he's looking at this Simply Wonderful, kind of inspecting it, And then he ate the whole thing in one go. And then he said, all right, you can be the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. Iskcon, seriously. This is what happened. This is the power of prasadam. It's one example. There are many. Oh, there's many. Here's another little interesting story I just picked up very recently, maybe at Mayapur. When there's gatherings of Prabhupada disciples, like in the GBC meetings where they're mainly Prabhupada disciples, you pick up these stories. This is a nice one. Prabhupada was on a morning walk in Calcutta. And in Calcutta, there is the very big and very impressive looking Victoria Memorial. Are you familiar with that? It's a monument, but it looks like a palace. I mean, it really looks like sort of the Indian version of Buckingham Palace. It's really big, marble, and really ornate. Next time you go to Mayapur, ask the driver to show you the Victoria Memorial, because it's like, wow. It's extremely impressive. So Prabhupada was walking with the devotees by the Victoria Memorial. It is 16 stories high. 16. It's big. It is really something extremely impressive. So Prabhupada said to the devotees, when I was young, I climbed to the top. 16 stories. And the devotees were shocked, because this is, it's really quite a thing. And devotees said, Srila Prabhupada, you were very brave. And Prabhupada replied, and I am still brave. Otherwise I would not have come to your country alone. Yeah. Prabhupada was brave. Here's a funny little story. Well, it's not a story. Is the treasurer here? Who looks after the cash?
No, I think he's taking care of the prasadam right now.
Is the cook here?
No, they're probably taking care of the prasadam.
Any cooks here? Oh yes, of course. Anyway, Prabhupada was talking about one time temple management and the different officers looking after the different functions of the temple. And Prabhupada said, The temple treasurer should always be a little thin. And then Prabhupada said, and the temple cook should always be a little fat. I want to tell you a controversial story, which I didn't tell you last time. Have you heard of Chinmayananda, the late? I mean, any of you from Hindu backgrounds, surely. You heard of Chinmayananda, Swami, from India? One of the big Swamis. He died whenever, not some years ago. So anyway, there was a devotee. Unfortunately, this devotee passed away a few years ago, but some of you may have heard of him at least, or even known him. His name was Srinathji from Mumbai. Any of you know of Srinathji? I don't know if he came here. He came to South Africa once. No, he was a very prominent disciple of Radhanath Maharaj in Mumbai. So he became a devotee in Prabhupada's time. And actually he knew Prabhupada, they had a relationship. But somehow he never took initiation from Prabhupada. He took initiation, maybe several years later from Radhanath Maharaj. So, but anyway, he was visiting the temple very regularly, maybe every day, at least very regularly, and meeting with Prabhupada. And Prabhupada would preach to him, and he was just very attracted by Prabhupada and his knowledge and his way of presenting things. He was very attracted, but he was still visiting Chinmayananda regularly. He was, I think, like a disciple of Chinmayananda, or he was a very wealthy man. So he was a donor, and he knew Chinmayananda. They had a relationship. So now this Srinathji, he wasn't initiated. Dr. Desai was his name. He's sort of got one foot in both camps, you could say. He's got this connection with Chinmayananda, but now he's becoming more and more attracted by Prabhupada. And he told Prabhupada, well, Prabhupada asked him, what does he say? Sometimes Prabhupada would speak like that about some so-called Swami or sort of bogey yogi type. What does he say? And the person would then say what the person says, and Prabhupada would just defeat it. So he asked him, Srinathji, what does he say? And Srinathji said, well, Prabhupada, he says he is God. And Prabhupada just laughed. And Prabhupada told him, I am sending a challenge to Chinmayananda through you, a challenge. I want him to hold up a table with one hand for 7 minutes. So Srinathji went over there and said that to Chinmayananda. And in the room was a table, not a little table like this, but maybe 4 times bigger or 6 times, a little substantial low table, which, I don't know, probably weighed maybe 75 or 100 kilos. So Srinathji went in there and said to him, Bhaktivedanta Swami has sent you a challenge. Can you lift this table with one hand and hold it for 7 minutes? And Chinmayananda said, that's ridiculous. That's ridiculous, just, not interested. And Srinathji was not impressed at all. And he went back to Prabhupada and told him. And Prabhupada said, so your God, he cannot even hold up a table for 7 minutes. Krishna held up a mountain for 7 days and 7 nights and held it on the little finger of his left hand, not even his right hand. And Srinathji surrendered on the spot. And he never saw Chinmayananda again. I hope I didn't offend any of you if you are Chinmayananda fans. But that's what happened. There was another man. What was his name? Oh my gosh. Mr. Sethi. Maybe Sriniketan Prabhu, you might have met Mr. Sethi in Mumbai. He was a building contractor. And he also got very involved, very attracted by Prabhupada in Mumbai. And he helped in many ways. In the early days and during the construction, he helped in many ways. This is a serious one, by the way. You should fasten your seatbelts. Fasten your seatbelts. All right? You ready? Okay. So Mr. Sethi was just getting involved, just starting. He got extremely involved. But at this point, he was just starting to get involved, very attracted by Prabhupada. So Prabhupada, one day, he came to visit Prabhupada. And Prabhupada asked him, so, what is your program? And he didn't know what Prabhupada meant. So he assumed he meant, what work do you do? So Mr. Sethi said, well, I'm in the construction business. I have a construction company, and we build different buildings and things. And Prabhupada said, no, I don't mean that. I mean, what do you do in the morning? Yes. And Prabhupada means some sort of sadhana, some mantras or meditation or something. What do you do in the morning? And Mr. Sethi said, well, I get up, I have a cup of tea, and I read the newspaper. And Prabhupada, I hope you're ready. Prabhupada said, so, what is the difference between you and a pig? Haribol. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. And you can imagine someone becoming offended. But Prabhupada was so amazing. And Mr. Sethi didn't get offended. He sat there and he thought, he's right. He's right. So he changed his ways and he never got initiated. He passed away also several years ago. But he became an Iskcon man and Prabhupada man. Yeah. What is the difference between you and a pig? I was once in Prabhupada's room in Bhaktivedanta Manor, his darshan room, and he was speaking to some young couple who were not devotees. And actually I forget the details, but some discussion was going on, and they were basically quite happy. And at some point they explained some of their habits, which were not the best. They were really not up to a good standard. And Prabhupada said, you are just like dogs and cats. He told them, and they agreed. Yes, you're right. But then a few minutes later, they went out, and there was a few of us there, and Prabhupada said, I can say these types of things to people, but you may not be able to. So you be careful. Yeah. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta would sometimes preach in that way, like very heavy and you could say insulting. He called it a chopping technique. Yeah. Here's an interesting one. I don't know if you're familiar with this. This is from Giriraj Maharaj, his personal experience. He told me, I don't know if it's well known or in one of his books, but it's a good one. At that time, the temple in Mumbai was being built, and the devotees, there were some old apartment blocks, like 3 or 4 stories, old style, in which there were tenants living. But we got control of one, and Prabhupada moved into rooms on the roof. And Giriraj Maharaj, one day he went to see Prabhupada, and you go up onto the roof, and there's this open area. It's not just all built up, there's this open area. There are photos of Prabhupada sitting on that open area. And so you walk through this open area, and then there are these rooms that Prabhupada was using. So Giriraj Maharaj, now he's come up onto the roof. He's just taken a couple of steps towards Prabhupada's rooms, and some businessman came storming out of Prabhupada's rooms. Really just like not happy. And Giriraj Maharaj has just taken a couple of steps, and the stairway is just behind him, and the man just walked straight past him. And Giriraj Maharaj said, Hare Krishna. The man said nothing. And went. He was not happy. And Giriraj Maharaj then went into Prabhupada's darshan room, and Prabhupada was sitting like, let me see, who is anyone sitting cross-legged but with one knee up? Can you see? She's got 2 knees up. You've got... Anyway, you know what I mean. Prabhupada's sitting cross-legged, but with one knee up. And he had his hand on his head, like, sure. And he told Giriraj Maharaj, please remind me, I should not tell people that Ramakrishna is a rascal. Did you catch that? I hope there are no Ramakrishna fans here. But this is what Giriraj Maharaj told me personally. Here's another interesting little story. It's kind of funny, but it's just interesting. There was one devotee disciple of Prabhupada named Sridhar Swami, American, kind of heavily built, and really nice devotee, so nice. He was nicknamed the Jolly Swami. Did he ever come here? Anyway, so Sridhar Swami, he passed away, I don't know, at least 10 years ago or something. So anyway, he joined the temple young, in the late 60s, as I recall, and he was a brahmachari. Then he went to India and he was serving there in Mumbai. And as a brahmachari and a preacher. And he got the inspiration he'd like to take sannyas. So he approached Prabhupada. And he asked Prabhupada, I would really like to take sannyas. Would you please allow me? Would you please give me sannyas? And Prabhupada looked at him. Prabhupada had this way of looking at people. I cannot imitate it. But like penetrating look. And Prabhupada said, are you 100% sure you will not fall down? What would you say if Prabhupada asked you that? Sridhar Maharaj was a very straightforward and honest person. He said, no, Prabhupada, I'm not 100% sure. Prabhupada said, are you 75% sure you will not fall down? Sridhar Maharaj said, no, Srila Prabhupada, I'm not 75% sure. Prabhupada said, are you 50% sure you will not fall down? And Sridhar Maharaj thought momentarily and said, yes, Prabhupada, I think I'm 50% sure I'll not fall down. And Prabhupada said, all right, you can take sannyas. Oh, Krishna. Here's another one you wouldn't have heard of. This is a story from London before we got Bhaktivedanta Manor. Because when we got Bhaktivedanta Manor, Prabhupada would stay there. But prior to that means he first came in 69, then 70, 71, 72. He came. He came a number of times. And he would stay at the temple right in central London. But he would go for his morning walks. In central London, there are a number of parks. Right in the central area, there's a number of parks. You know, our existing temple in Soho Street. Maybe some of you, I imagine some of you have been to our Soho Street temple. There's a park about 30 meters away, 50 meters at the most. So anyway, you get these parks. And Prabhupada would go for walks in the parks. So one day, let's see. One day, one devotee was with Prabhupada. Prabhupada was walking in Regent's Park. It's a big park. It's just slightly outside the very central area. So Prabhupada's walking in Regent's Park. It's a very nice park. And many flowers are growing. And the one devotee with Prabhupada was picking flowers to be offered to Radha London Ishwara, the deities in the temple in central London. So the devotee asked Prabhupada, when we offer flowers to Krishna, Do their spirit souls go back to the spiritual world? That's an interesting question, isn't it? When we offer flowers to Krishna. Prabhupada remained silent a little while, and then he replied, yes, but factually, they're already in the kingdom of God. Anyway, think about that. And then Prabhupada stopped and waved his walking stick, pointing at different things and creatures. You know, they have swans and they have different things there. People are there and cranes, different like long-legged aquatic birds. And Prabhupada said, they are all in the kingdom of God. I want you to think about this. So the devotee, now he's sort of beginning to get the idea. He said, yes, Srila Prabhupada, but they are not aware that they're in the kingdom of God. And Prabhupada said, that is the duty of a spiritual master, to make them aware. Let's see. Here's another serious one. Tamal Krishna Goswami and one other devotee were sitting in the class. Prabhupada referred to a verse, and then he pointed to them and said, can you quote this verse? And they looked at each other like, go on, you quote the verse. But neither of them could remember. And Prabhupada said, just see, you're not reading my books. Every day you have to read, study, learn my books, just like a lawyer. Just like a lawyer learns the law books. You should know everything, chapter and verse. If you don't know, how will you preach? And then Prabhupada said, do you know that every day I read my books? And Prabhupada asked, do you know why I read my books? And these devotees are sitting there, in front of the other devotees, just sort of on the spot. They didn't try to answer. Prabhupada said, I read my books because even I learn something new every time I read my books. Because these are not my books. I do not write these books. Then the devotee says, it seemed as though something mystical came over Prabhupada as he was, continuing to speak. Prabhupada continued, every morning when I sit here to write my books, Krishna comes personally and dictates to me what to write. I simply take dictation from Krishna to write these books. Therefore, when I read them, even I learn something. So the devotee says, the devotee who's telling the story, he said, this was so dramatic, and we felt the weight of his words so strongly. And the devotee thought, I am speaking with a person who is speaking with God, who's right next to God. I'm only one person removed from God. Srila Prabhupada ki.
Yeah.
I think I didn't mention last time. This is something interesting you can just bear in mind. Devotees made a cake for Prabhupada, they made a cake. And they decorated the cake. Like on the altar, often devotees put little cows, little elephants and whatnot. So on the cake, the devotees put a cow made of marzipan. You know what marzipan is? It's almond powder mixed with sugar, marzipan. It's like a sweet. And they use it when they make cakes. So they made a marzipan cow. And Prabhupada came and looked. And Prabhupada, the devotee, says, Prabhupada dryly commented, "Oh, so now you want me to eat cow." Sometimes we make these decorative cakes with different things and whatnot, and be careful. No marzipan cows. What was I going to say? Prabhupada was talking to one devotee about how when he came to the West, he had wanted to go to America, although his, people who he knew, like a few God brothers and other connections of his, they said he should go to London. But Prabhupada wanted to go to America, and the others would try and convince him to go to London, but he didn't want to go, he wanted to go to America. So this devotee, Prabhupada was speaking with this devotee, explaining that, and the devotee was congratulating Prabhupada for his astute social judgment. Because at that time, late 60s or mid-60s, America, of course it's much bigger than England, but it was really becoming the capital of the world, and England was kind of, subsiding after the Second World War. So this devotee was congratulating Prabhupada. And Prabhupada said, yes, one of my godbrothers went to England. He failed to do anything. He was complete failure. He was failure number one. Then another godbrother, he went to Germany. He was complete failure. He was failure number two. So I thought, if I'm going to fail, at least let me fail in a new place. So I thought, I'll go to America. Here's a nice little story. I think I didn't tell it last time. There was a devotee, Jayananda Prabhu. I imagine many of you have heard of him. He was like a real hero. Boy. He was never a sannyasi. In fact, he became a householder. And we were in London, and in those days there was no internet. There were no personal telephones you could walk around with. There was nothing. Believe it or not, there was life before WhatsApp. Can you believe it? There was. It's true. There was life. So anyway, Jayananda. This is in Los Angeles. Maybe you don't know the layout. There you've got the deities, and then Prabhupada's Vyasasana is on this side, pretty much right by the deities, but facing straight across the room. And then the room goes out to the doors. So Prabhupada was staying there. Every day he'd give class, every morning he'd give class, and then he'd get off the Vyasasana and walk. He would sort of have a route that he would follow to walk out the front door and then go to his rooms. So this one devotee was thinking, I would like to have an interaction with Prabhupada. I would like to, get right in front of him and go, Jai Prabhupada. And then hopefully he would go, Jai to me, to him, to the devotee. So the devotee noted the route that Prabhupada would take. He noted carefully the route. And so the next morning, he positioned himself strategically right on the route. And, sort of like heading towards the door, but still inside the temple room, but, more than, maybe halfway from the Vyasasana to the door. So there he is, he's ready. He's just, he is in position. Just waiting for his chance. And sure enough, here comes Prabhupada. Sure enough. And he's just coming that way. And the devotee is just in the right position, and he's ready. And Prabhupada got to about, 2 meters, 2.5 meters before the devotee. Suddenly Prabhupada just turned at right angles and went across into the kitchen. And the devotee missed his chance. But then he looked to see where Prabhupada was going. Prabhupada went into the kitchen. In the kitchen was Jayananda Prabhu cooking breakfast for the devotees. And Prabhupada went in and spent a few minutes talking with Jayananda, and then went out, on another route. So the point is, you cannot really contrive something in Krishna consciousness, not really. Sincerity has to be there. Mercy comes where sincerity is. You don't have to be, some big star, important, officer, director or something. But you do have to be sincere. And that's the key. That's the key to getting the mercy. Because we're always dependent on the mercy. We're really dependent on the mercy. Let's see. What time do the doors open?
9.
Oh, 9. Okay. When should we stop?
We can check where the prasadam is, and then I'll let you know. I'll just check and see
Okay.
if it's ready.
Well, it is, it's
Yeah.
22.
If it's not ready, then we have another 10 minutes, 10-15 minutes.
Okay. Are you okay to continue? little bit. Do you remember last year, did I tell you the peanut oil story? Did I? Harry Dave, do you remember? Peanut oil? You don't remember? Anyway, we'll tell you.
So it's just coming in, so we have another 10 minutes before they start up.
Okay. 10 minutes. Is that okay?
Yes.
Right, okay. So this was in the San Diego temple. San Diego. And Prabhupada was visiting, and the temple president came to see Srila Prabhupada. And the temple president said, Srila Prabhupada, one of our friends is offering us some peanut oil. It's a cooking oil, basically. Some peanut oil at a very good price. Is it all right if we buy it? And Srila Prabhupada, sort of nonchalant, said, peanut oil is not so high class. And the devotee said, but Prabhupada, it's very cheap. And we will save money. And Prabhupada said, it is not so high class. And the temple president said, but Prabhupada, we will save money. We will be able to pay more money to the BBT to pay for books. And Prabhupada said, and fasten your seatbelts, I'm afraid. But Prabhupada said this. Prabhupada said, use any damn thing you like. And the president got the message a bit more. And he said, oh, all right. And he said, do you know people who've used peanut oil, Prabhupada? Prabhupada said, yes. I knew one man. One evening, he ate a whole lot of pakoras, which had been fried in peanut oil. And the president said, really? What happened to him? And Prabhupada said, he died the next morning. So the subject of peanut oil was not raised any further. Oh, Krishna. Okay, then, so that was the peanut oil story. Where are we? Just let me touch on sincerity again. Sincerity from the heart, in a genuine mood, and with no sort of pretensions, if you know what I mean, no showing off.